So I'd started this book, Center of the Cyclone, a while ago when I was getting into microdosing acid in the float tank. And somebody was like, have you heard of John Lilly? And I was like, isn't that the guy that invented float tanks? And they're like, yeah, well, he was a pretty good, a fairly explorative psychonaut himself. And so somebody recommended that book, one of the owners of a float tank that I was using out in the Bay Area. And I go through it and it was like, oh, this is incredible. He was a medical doctor and he had prescription LSD from Sandoz Labs. He was homies with Hoffman. Mm-hmm. So he'd shoot intravenously 300 micrograms of LSD and then float in his first custom-made float tank for 12 hours. Whew. And he has some of the craziest trip reports, like, DMT level trip reports, but for 12 hours. And he gets through all those. And what was cool is I have this bookmark in here. It's a $1 bill. And I just felt called the other night to grab the book. I was like, I wonder why I stopped reading this. And I get to a point and it's on the mapping of heaven and hell. And I recall why I stopped reading it, because I was like, I'm just interested in the trip reports. I've never been to hell. Who cares about that? But after 30 grams of penis envy and the infinite loop of hell, I was like, this is actually very pertinent information. And it's really to map, how we can get to those states of heaven or hell in everyday waking consciousness or in the psychedelic realm. And so I find it very curious and fascinating to finish this book now. So it's at the top of my list. And then I have, of course, some other ones I'm working on as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, brother.
It's a never-ending story.
It's funny how the soul guides you to different books at different times, and pieces of it, you get through halfway and you're like, I think I'm done. And then 3 years later, you're like, oh no, I need to read this now.
Yeah. One thing I remember stumbling across in Lily's was and this was late 50s. I mean, so on point, but he's just like, hey, under LSD, there is a heightened kinesthetic awareness. And so the ability to stretch, to move, to repattern, kinesthetic programming.
Yeah.
It was because, what is this book? One of them is like meta-programming in the human biocomputer.
Yes.
And I just randomly cracked open the page and it was right there. This is exact descriptor. Because for me, any kind of high state experiences are wildly embodied in kinesthetic. Like the very first thing I feel like doing is working out the kinks and stretching and opening, mm-hmm. and there's very little just passive cogitating to be done. I'd rather roll. I'd rather do everything in an embodied sense. And it feels like sort of like you're getting your sort of spidey senses on.
I've been getting that way with psilocybin, not at the 30-gram dose. That was just out of body the whole time. But, with both the 10-gram and 8-gram experiences that I've had recently with penis envy, it's almost like a purge. Like how if you're in Aya, you want to I just want to listen to this song, and Aya's like, no, you really need to fucking get up and puke, or you really need to go to the bathroom. The music will be here, and you just have to go. I just have to get up and move. Mm-hmm. It's like you don't have a choice, sock puppet style. Like you're going to get up and move in a way that opens you up because this is locked and this is blocked, and whatever it is, energetically or not or otherwise, it is in the body. It's there for sure. You feel the kinks and you can unlock those things rather rapidly through breath and movement. And that just opens the whole channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, brother. I've always definitely had that experience. Well, I've been wanting to have this podcast with you for some time. I've been a fan of I've been a fan of you for many years. And Stealing Fire was such a great book because I think it bridged the gap of awareness around altered states through flow and through many of the ways we make it there, and including a beautiful description of the Eleusinian mysteries, and as far back as we can date some of these practices that have gotten us to tap into a deeper level of knowing. And of course, we have a wide range of very cool topics to discuss today. Something that you brought up to me on our hike through the Greenbelt was on hierogamy. Mm-hmm. So I want to dive deeply into that. I know you've got a lot to say on it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll have plenty of questions to go along with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, just to set it back in frame, I mean, obviously I would imagine that, listeners of your podcast and kind of following yours and Tasha's life experience, et cetera, and Aubrey's and kind of that your extended community have all been exploring varying forms of liberated and liberating sexuality and relational formats. And how does that fit in the constellation of basically ecstasis and catharsis, peak experiences and deep healing? And how do these all live together and gear into each other in a way that leads to, potentially communitas, like, and whether that's in a dyad, like a pair, and deep relationship communion, and expanding out into tribe and into bigger connections. So in that space, it seems like if you kind of continue the inquiry that I teed up in Stealing Fire, which is, what is the role of peak states in those other two things, in the healing and integrating and in the connecting and collaborating. And you do it and you're not squeamish. You just kind of do it in an open-hearted way. You go where the research and the evidence suggests, et cetera. You basically end up with, super sexy biohacking or really nerdy kink. And so the question of like, how might we do that? How ought we proceed with that sort of what you could call sort of a hedonic yoga of becoming, that includes psychedelics, that includes sexuality, that includes breath work, movement, embodiment, potentially, music, all of these things together. What does that look like, and how do we steer? Because in general, the only folks or communities of practice around that sort of stuff have often had kinks. There have been reasons why. So if you put all those things together, you're like, well, let's just do it all. You're like, well, who does all that? And you're like,
cults.
Yeah, cults, bachelor parties in Vegas, the Castro district, chemsex gay scene in Berlin and San Francisco. You're like, oh shit, that's debauchery, right? That road lies ruin, right? And so for quote unquote regular folks who are sincere in their path towards, both inspiration and integration, so peaks and healing, it can be confusing as far as like, hey, what is a path with heart? What is a road that leads us to the light, mythologically, you could sort of say that the Grail castle, right? Where the errant knight seeking the loving cup goes, versus the Hotel California, which becomes the seeking of sensation and pleasure in the hell realms. And I think we see that, especially you see that in the Burning Man community, right? You can see that in the beginning of the night, in the early evenings, everybody is fresh, everybody is riding whatever, metabolic chemicals they're on, and there can be profound beauty. It's often super sexy. It's really powerful. You're like, oh shit, this is like Star Tribe, badass motherfuckers. Like everybody's throwing down. You wait until 4 a.m., 5 a.m. People are on the jaggedy back end, of a re-up at 2 a.m. That you see the fucking New York form, models like just blankly shaking their asses on top of the robot hot bus, and you're like, oh, this isn't that anymore. Where did all the angels go?
Yeah.
And it starts feeling a little hollow and a little empty. So I think that's a real question, which is, what does a contemporary left-hand path look like? Because like the right-hand paths is the orthodox path. Orthodox just literally means straight thinking, like orthodontist just means straight teeth, right? So orthodox is like the way is straight, but the path is narrow. Don't fuck it up. Don't do these things, don't do those things. And the left-hand path is basically, and it harm none, do what thou wilt. It's all good, right? Work with all the experiences, all the materials, and metabolize them into accelerated growth. But the reality is that, if you track, and we were just talking about John Lilly, right? You can add in Ken Kesey, you can add in Aleister Crowley, you can add in, a whole long line of folks that went down the left-hand path and put it in the ditch. Because precisely, like, if you can hack the arousal and reward networks and systems in the human body and brain, it's very hard to put the brakes on them. And if you set aside the right-hand path rules and you realize, in fact, I'm doing what I will, then there is this space where you've taken away all the social constructs and all the guidelines, and you realize that they are all essentially illusory or just rickety constructs, and then the temptation to be bent by grabbing the one ring of power is there. So you end up with like Heath Ledger's the Joker. Like, I'm not fucking doing anything, man. I'm just a dog chasing cars, right?
Yeah.
You end up with Brando in Apocalypse Now, like Kurt's going up the river. You end up with the amoral Sith Lord, pleasure sensation seeker. And so how do we, now that all of these tools and technologies are available to us, how do we incorporate them without overclocking our processors, right? And how do we maintain caring, compassionate, ethical relationship to it all when there's a very slim track record of people who have pulled this off and haven't succumbed to ego inflation, sensation seeking, indulgence, or some form of corruption or perversion. So that's really kind of been our inquiry.
Yeah, it's an important inquiry, and it's certainly an important inquiry for those that have recognized truth in a book like Sex at Dawn or in a book like Untrue by Wednesday Martin, where you start to see maybe we've kind of been coaxed into a certain model of living. Mm-hmm. And I think look, sex aside, you watch a movie like The Matrix, and if you get it, you will see it in everything. You'll see it in the way we eat food. You'll see it in what we're told to buy. You'll see it in television programming. You'll see it in all the ways that we're taught how to live in the modern world. And I think there's a big pull to ancestral living. And I think a lot of that makes sense to us. It certainly did for my wife and I when we read Sex at Dawn on how our sexuality could have been in a different way. And that doesn't, it's not to say that this was blanketly across the board egalitarian and that everyone fucked everyone and it was a fucking giant peace pie. It wasn't, right? But there were different models. And I think, intention is such a big piece, but even with the right intentions, you can get off track. Mm-hmm. So I would love to dive deeper into that model and some of the things that you brought up on the hike, which were really important in terms of, you can only choose 3 out of the 4 that we were talking about,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in fact, I was just thinking about this yesterday. So to your point about once you've seen The Matrix, right, you see it everywhere. And I was thinking, holy shit, like what an amazing drumbeat of cultural narratives constantly reinforced of, if you play in this space, it may be fun for a while, folks, but there's always hell to pay. And the classic trope is like all the slasher Halloween flicks and all the horror movies, where it's always the hot blonde chick who has sex and then dies. Yeah. There's always that one. And then you think of like Johnny Depp's Blow, that movie, and Boogie Nights, and even The Beach with Leo DiCaprio, right? All 3 of those, and there's 1,000 others, right? There's always this paradisical early phase where it all looks absolutely fucking amazing, and then boom, hell to pay. So how many times does that story get reinforced in all of our cultural scripts? There's a crypto-puritanical narrative that we are so familiar with that when it comes, see, there's no shortcuts. See, there's no free lunches. See, it's Icarus, right? Again and again and again. So, I mean, imagine if our stories went the other way. It's powerful. So to your point about Sex at Dawn, I've been thinking about like Sex at Dawn and Untrue and that whole, and What Women Want. There's kind of a constellation of books that have come out in the last 5 years or so that are basically very similar in thesis, right? They're basically saying, hey, traditional, or at least, 19th, 20th century conventional Judeo-Christian monogamy is a construct. And that in the past, especially in the ancient past, there was a much, a sort of hidden reality of open relating and basically lustful women. I mean, it basically is giving permission back for women for agency, choice, appetite, right? All of those kinds of things. And it's obviously, no surprise, gone gangbusters. People love reading those books. Now, most evolutionary biologist friends of ours don't think that much of the science. There's definitely a lot of cutting the foot to fit the shoe, and it's a just so story. It's kind of like how the leopard got its spots, or why the giraffe has a long neck. Like these are stories with, debatable academic footing, but credible enough to be persuasive to mainstream audiences. But what I find really interesting, rather than like dismissing them at the academic level, what I think is more interesting is like, why now? Why do they hit? Why do they gain such traction? And why do general readers feel such permission, to live into a new story? And this was true even like Carlos Castaneda, right? I mean, the teachings of Don Juan turns out to be a made up story, but Castaneda was sourcing from someplace, right? I mean, while he may have been making up large chunks of his PhD dissertation at UCLA, right, and all of those kind of things, it doesn't mean that it was all, it's a helpful lie, right? And so the teachings of Don Juan remain relevant because they're speaking to people's present as much as they're describing a true past. And the same even with Sapiens, right? I mean, Sapiens, that was my neck of the woods in grad school as well. So like, when I read Sapiens, particularly, I think it's like chapter 4, but he's basically, when he goes from painting the picture of like Neolithic cavemen, and then he kind of like speeds up the film and gets you to the beginning of the agrarian revolution 10,000 years ago. And he says in that chapter, like he makes all kinds of like big, major assertions about the unfolding of human culture and civilization. And since I was familiar with the historiography in the field, I'm like, holy shit, man, a lot must have happened in the last 10 years. Like, I don't remember this being like definitive truth. And so I flipped to the back of the book, and for that entire chapter, where he basically compresses, 50,000 to 100,000 years of human culture, there's not a single goddamn footnote. I'm like, holy shit, Yuval, this is an extended op-ed, and no one caught it. No one called him out on it because we were all bouncing along on the meta-narrative, on the big story he was telling. And he is upending the story of neoliberal consumer promise, right? He's saying, hey, the rat race began a long fucking time ago, right, with the advent of agriculture. And the story we've been told that it's all been getting better, blah, 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 Steven Pinker, all that kind of stuff, is actually not true. And we're better off doing something old school and primitive, or going back to our roots, or some other possibility. So I think that, it's fascinating when stories today give ourselves permission to live into new, different narratives, right? Versus their actual kind of quote unquote objective truth. And so with all that, and by the way, I mean, I think that like Sex at Dawn and What Women Want and Untrue, they are of a genre that also includes things like Robert Bly and Iron John, Women Who Run with the Wolves, Chalice and the Blade. There was kind of a 90s expression of that stuff as well, which was, hey, there were the burning times in Europe, the goddess religions were repressed, there's all this kind of stuff. And so we're forever ginning up and dusting off old myths and then rebooting them to live forwards in our lives. And so, with that, I think that one of the most interesting things about sexuality today is just to realize that evolution itself, like what we're working with, and certainly what Sex at Dawn starts to speak to a bit, is that evolution is fundamentally amoral and doesn't actually give a shit about our own preferences at all. And so much of human suffering is based on the rub between our hard-coded biological impulses and then our preferences and our values and our feelings and our relationships and our norms. So when we think about that, you think about, I mean, literally, like, I don't know how much. If you ran a calculation, I'm guessing it's probably 2/3 plus of human suffering boils down to sexuality and conflicts around sexuality and all those kinds of things. If you think about the amount of sexual abuse and trauma, I mean, it's 8% of Asians share Genghis Khan's DNA.
Yeah, it's a fucking huge number.
Yeah, that's just rape and pillage. You're like, holy shit, that's incredible. Like, and the fact that things like 50% of sexual violence against women happens to girls before the age of 16. That is gutting. And then you think about you think, oh, and prefrontal cortexes don't turn on until the age of 24, 25.
Yeah, the brain doesn't finish till 28, right?
I mean, we were just watching a Netflix special with a woman comic, a young woman comic, but she was like, yeah, you know God's a man because he like made boobs like 10 years ahead of like finishing brains. Which was a punchline, but also speaks to the profound, like that a post-pubescent girl is sexually available, and for all of human history has been married, has been raped, has been all of those things, and yet emotional maturity and adult consent is lagging. You're just like, that 10 years, how much trauma and suffering is because of that?
Do you think, and this may be a slightly off topic, but I think it's pertinent for the discussion of evolution. Do you think that with the way a lot of indigenous cultures used to raise children, like the Hopis would not have the parents raise the child, it was always aunties and uncles. A lot of cultures, it would be the grandparents. So you'd have at least one level of differentiation because it was too close. The parents were too close to have that hands-on approach. And a lot of cultures, the parents would still be able to work and do whatever, the hunting and gathering or whatever they were doing for that first half of the day when everyone worked, and the kids would all be banded together with the elders. And do you think that kids could have children at a younger age for the sake that not all children were going to live, so they could start that longer by design sexually, but with the growth of the human brain and where it's come to through evolution, that is why it lags? But at least that we had set that up in a way, society-wise, where it could work better than a nuclear family.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and specifically the Hopi, right? I mean, they had a very open policy as far as adolescent sexuality and exploration. So there was same-sex exploration, there was early promiscuity and experimentation, there were all of these things pre-marriage, and it was all integrated and understood. So by the time there was a pairing, it was understood you'd effectively kind of got your yayas out, right? And that divorce, or separation was as easy as, this is true for most of the Plains tribes as well, but it's just, some simple ritual like just putting the dude's moccasins outside the door. like beat it, son. Like I'd like a change up, and even a norm like women averting their gaze and never making eye contact with their mother-in-laws, which it makes fucking perfect sense if you're stuck in a teepee all winter. You're like, damn, that is some genius anthropology right there. So the sense of, did it work within a cultural context that includes just basic realities, including infant mortality, including all of these things, including extended kin networks and care? Yeah, I'm sure it did. But just to kind of continue the thread of like the notion of how amoral evolution is, right? Think about the honeymoon phase. You're high as a coon on, first of all, estrogen, testosterone is, the mating impulse. Then you get sort of dopamine, and the drive for novelty and honeymoon highs. All that stuff tends to wear off in 2 to 3 years, which is precisely long enough to have sex, impregnate, gestate, and nurse an infant, and then boom, often switches off like a light, and people end up in the doldrums. You end up with women. In fact, I just read this paper last week, which was that when women are ovulating, or actually no, it's when women have, it's the week immediately preceding ovulation, they actually experience a dip, they experience a change in estrogen, and they become more irritated with their stable mate. They don't like how he looks. They don't like how he smells. They don't like how he talks. And the man notices that. So he has a drop in testosterone. And the theory is that this actually increases her likelihood of stepping out on her guy in peak fertility to seek a more genetically superior mate.
Wow.
Yeah, you're like, oh, fuck, that's so brutal. And the same things happens with birth control pills. So birth control pills jack estrogen, and they will leave a woman seeking the domestic caregiver. So quite the classic pattern is a woman will be on the pill for a long-term relationship. She will love and find this man. He's a good mate. He's going to be a good husband, a good father. They get married. She goes off the pill. They start trying to have a baby. And then suddenly she's like, Berber? Like, what? What are you, weak chin looking fucking motherfucker? Like, I'm going to go bang a Harley Davidson guy. And so the idea, and you're like, oh, that is such dirty pool. And you fast forward it, men in their 40s experience a drop in testosterone. And many, many of them blow up perfectly good homes, lives, marriages, work, because they go out and bang the secretary or chase some hot young thing. And then, biologically, what is the surest fire way to boost T count in a guy? It is new sex with a younger mate. That can cost millions of dollars and create all kinds of conflict and turmoil. And then, 6 months later or 2 months later, they too are like, wait a second. I'm Nintendo and she's Xbox. We don't even have anything to talk about. She doesn't even know the same sitcom. She was watching fucking Disney Channel when I was a grown-ass man. Like, I got nothing in common with this woman now that the scales have fallen from my eyes. But what does he say? I just feel so alive around her. Everything seems fresh and new. And she's like, yeah, dude, you just got to boost. You could have gone to your doctor and got a fucking T-patch and been fine. That would have been way cheaper. So you look at all this stuff and you're like, oh my God. There is so much untold suffering, so much grief, so much trauma by us having our strings pulled by evolutionary drivers and impulses. But if we can identify all that, and you also think just sheer awe that somehow we have figured out a way to get busy and make more of us for millions of years with no instruction manual. There was that old movie, was it Blue Lagoon with Brooke Shields? It was her first movie, and it was her.
I haven't seen that since I was a kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was kind of racy when you're a kid. You're like, there's boobies and stuff. But she and this other boy are stranded on a desert island, and then they kind of come of age and they figure out how to get busy. And you think about it, you're like, you're an adolescent young boy, and suddenly your nuts drop and they start making testosterone, and then your little pee-pee stands up. Right. And it's super, super sensitive, all kinds of crazy nerve endings, but everything it runs into, whether it's the inside of your jeans or your hand, it's rough, but if you play with it, interesting things happen, but everything's kind of rough and doesn't feel that good. And then suddenly somehow you find a girl, right? And you're like, wait a second, there's this, my bits match your bits, right? And there's this little super warm, super slick slot that you have that fits my thingy. Right. And then funnily enough, the viscosity of a woman's arousal is higher viscosity than our synovial fluid in our knee joints. It's the slickest thing that humans make. And you're like, warm, wet, and slippery. Let me just try parking it there. That feels amazing. Well, wait a second. Let me back it out again. Wait, let me park it. Let me back it out. And then suddenly, lights, camera, action, amazing things happen if you play well for both of you. And then bam, 9 months later, you're like, joke's on you. You have another little human. Now, what the fuck connects those two activities? That is a bait and switch of epic proportions. And we are led down that garden path willy-nilly. So you realize that, and you're like, okay, that is some amazingly strong drivers, amazingly strong neurochemical, biological impulse. And it leads to, even in the developed world today, the US, Western Europe, Japan, in the developed world, it's a 50-50 coin toss on whether a pregnancy is wanted or not.
Wow.
Half of the humans in the developed world are unwanted accidents of that evolutionary bait and switch. And you're like, holy shit, what would the world look like if all of us were wanted? If all of us had a home to be welcomed into that was stable, prepared, and ready to raise another person? So we're like, holy shit, man. So that right there is the human condition. You can pretty much boil it down to this. And along with consciousness and realizing we're going to die, that's probably the other half of the existential mind fuck.
Yeah, mortality's pretty big.
It's a doozy, right? And our buddy Jason Silva, is forever quoting Ernest Becker on that one. So the question is rather than succumb to that, right? Can we take all of that encoding and all of that biological impulses and all those drivers and actually just jump the tracks? And instead of saying this is solely for procreation, habitual instinctive, right, procreation, can we jump the tracks and put it towards transformation, right? And if we can use all of those drivers in a kind of judo move, then you're into the realm of what is alternately in the East is typically called tantra, and what in the West is usually referred to as sex magic. So can you take all of that momentum and roll it, judo or Keto style, into the other project. And that's where things get super interesting.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated with it. I have one of Osho's books somewhere over there on tantra, and I haven't really taken a dive into it yet. I know it gets thrown around a lot in Burning Man circles and plant medicine circles, and depending on who you talk to, it kind of it can sound like the Holy Grail. It can sound like this thing that that somebody who like the first time I did ayahuasca, I wanted to fucking beat my chest and shout it on a mountaintop. Tell everyone, the world needs this.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thought process. Unpack what tantra is from your understanding, and really the reason, I guess, the reason we would want to explore that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's obviously lots of different definitions, and when people typically think of tantra, they think of sexy time. They think of the Kama Sutra and all that kind of stuff, right? Although interestingly, like the entire Kama Sutra, I think there's only like 11 or 12 pages devoted to sexuality, and the rest is all about flower arranging and music and art and massage and like just how to live a good, balanced life in connection. But basically, a super stripped down description of tantra is basically that left-hand path, which is working with all that arises as fuel or raw material for transformation, of which sexuality is a subset, right? And cultivating sexual energy, particularly orgasm, is a powerful fuel. It's almost like the flame underneath, of the crucible, right? So if you can cultivate that life force and use it to turn up the heat in a controlled manner, to burn away everything that isn't pure in your self-system, then that can be a really potent means of self-discovery and relational bonding. And in fact, to go back to John Lilly, right, 1953, he does that research with the rhesus monkeys and maps that the human, in fact, general primate, ecstatic arousal network. So like what in our nervous systems gives rise to peak states, maps one-to-one with the sexual arousal network, which makes good sense because evolution is efficient as well. It may be amoral, but it's efficient, right? It doesn't waste time, space, or energy or genes. And, then you realize that I was actually on a panel with Rick Doblin from MAPS last year, and we were just talking beforehand, and he was describing how their research with the Mdma studies for PTSD, they were kind of doing a neurochemical assay of where are folks when they're in that safe, open, connected place in themselves that allows them to go back and revisit traumatic experiences and kind of rewrite them, kind of over encode them with a new story. And he said it actually tends to be high prolactin, high vasopressin, high oxytocin. And interestingly, threshold beta wave brain activity. So it's not that they're completely zonked and they're sort of off in alpha, theta, like super dreamy. There's actually enough waking consciousness there that they're able to steer and they're able to kind of navigate the filing cabinets and this and that. But it's generally speaking a kind of dreamy, safe, secure, warm and loved place. And he said interestingly, the closest analog we found to that is post-orgasm. You're like, okay, that's interesting. So 30 years, $10 million, Schedule 1 substance, hard as fuck to navigate all these gates. Or how else could we get humans to a post-orgasmic state in order to heal trauma? And Nicole Prousey, who was at the Kinsey Institute and is now that famous and controversial researcher who's done research on pornography and research on women's arousal, all these sort of things. She actually did the studies on One Taste and Orgasmic Meditation as well. But she's really iconoclastic, and tragically, she's taken a ton of hits for this. I mean, like her world is really chaotic. In fact, Aaron Alexander has had her on his podcast as well. She's a badass and fearless, but is clearly creating a lightning rod of backlash and haters in the world. But one of her research projects is on validating women's orgasm as a replacement for SSRIs.
Wow.
Right? And the idea that, hey, look, if you can naturally trigger this cascade of neurochemistry, surely that's going to be more healing with less side effects, all of those kind of things. And shouldn't we be able to have that as part of our healthcare regimes? So you lay all this stuff together. You lay traditional tantra, Western sex magic, and then contemporary neuroscience and research around trauma and healing, and that notion of the huge evolutionary drivers, you're like, this is a pretty compelling case as to why we might want to introduce a component of basically sexual fitness to our overall regimes of becoming next level humans, right?
Yeah.
And that's different than like the emotional romantic. Like if you want to have that, absolutely have it. Like you don't need to like overburden Valentine's Day, or courtship or any of these things. But if you basically said, hey, there's a sexual yoga, right? A set of practices that are distinctly available, and it's more fun and more potent with a practice partner, right? Therefore, it's important, therefore we need to figure out how do we relate to each other in a way that's ethical, grounded, stable, that lets us engage in these practices. Because right now, I think that there's a ton of conversation in the relationship space that I find super uninteresting. It's really boring, actually, which is basically whose format is better, right? Is monogamy better? Is polyamory better? And there's a lot of very low level kind of almost pissing match. Right.
Well, I think that's kind of how the narrative goes through any conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Through the political climate, through social media, through all these different things, through social justice warriors, to you name it.
Yeah.
There's no gray area. It's almost like an old school need through the old patterning of communication to decide black and white.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't really leave us very far along this path of inquiry. So, the classic is that people who are in defense of traditional monogamy look at swinging, polyamory, et cetera, with a slightly prudish lens. They say, that will never work. And there's, the legitimate critiques and questions of stability, of indulgence, of what happens to the kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? That's a standard one. Polyamorists tend to say, bed death, compliance-based, joyless, lifelong partnership.
Yeah, how
natural,
many monogamous relationships end in divorce, and how many end with infidelity?
Yeah. And I think it's more interesting, to sort of pan back to the anthropological level and be like, hey, look, how does sexuality and relational format? What are the options? So you start at the bottom of the stack with celibacy. Like celibacy is a tool of cultivating sexual energy. Right? It doesn't just have to be shut it down, block it. It can actually be a way of channeling and intensifying it for spiritual practice or other ends. Then you have serial monogamy, which is by far and away the default in the Western world over the last several thousand years, which is just, if nothing else, infant mortality and maternal death would lead a man of means, in particular, to have multiple wives over a lifetime. Now it's happening in Westlake all the time, just with expensive divorces, right? But it just used to happen because of life. And then there's lifelong monogamy, and then there's any other form of open relating, right? So let's say, let's just call it that. We'll just call it polyamory. So for me, what I think is much more interesting than getting into straw man conversations where you set up the worst case example of one format to contrast and justify your own format. Let's just say they're all paths, right? They're all relational formats that can lead to higher levels of awakening, integration, and development. So rather than getting wrapped around the axle of format, let's consider what is the goal that we might all be seeking, which is not monogamy, right? But potentially hierogamy, which would be, in the Greek phrase, hieros gamos, was the sacred union. Right, it was literally the ritualized. If you've seen Eyes Wide Shut, that Stanley Kubrick film, right, that was a sexified Victoria's Secret-y, kind of expression. Like that union, that ritual of an archetypal man, archetypal woman in union to create some form of higher spiritual activity was what the Greeks called hieros gamos, and that's a mouthful. So you can, I think, just a play on words. You can just say higher. Ogamy, which is what is the unions that get us higher, right? And that is a very different question than who do I shack up with and why?
Yeah,
right. And because it sort of doesn't really, as long as it's consent. We're 21st century. We're all consenting adults. As long as we're playing nicely and we're honoring our agreements, like who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Right. Let's not relitigate and litigate that all the time. Let's be like, hey, you're playing well with your special friends. What are you seeing? What are you learning? How are we growing? And that to me becomes like, that's the conversation I'd love for more of. I think it's probably time for us all to move into that space, because what I know, actually, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that is a critical point that you're making. And, one of the reasons I see, we've had a ton of questions since we've begun to talk about our relationship model as it stands now. And I have, I should say, we started open relationship 7 years into monogamy. And that would never have fucking worked without that foundational piece being met, without being by each other's side and working through all of our shit together to get here to where we could handle all of the challenges that have presented themselves. But with that, the intention of growth, like how do we grow together? How do we use whatever stimulus, whether it is other partners or plant medicines or anything for that matter, the practices of yoga and meditation, how do we use those to grow? Is a very different thing than I think I want to fuck other people. And it's really a landing pad for us to realize that all of these things that come at us as challenges, if we look through the lens of growth, we can use that to heal and to grow together. And that's really why we've been able to extract and make it work thus far. We could, at some point, we may talk about personal stuff, but my point in bringing that up is I don't find that many people in the space of any relationship model, whether it is for monogamy or polyamory or open or any of these other in-betweens, is thinking of it that way, right? And that could be the thing that causes staleness in monogamy because you're not looking to grow with your partner. It's the same mindset as somebody who finishes colleges and says I don't need to read another book for the rest of my life. Right? I've done all my learning. I'm good. Right? If you treat the partner that way and the relationship you're in that way, it's stagnant water. It's not flowing anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you just referenced something that's really important to tease apart, which is that in most conversations about monogamy, polyamory, for instance, we get trapped by the language and we think that it's a polar choice or a binary. It's either or, but I think it's much more layered. So there's let's call it conventional monogamy down here, which is code-based social norms, compliance, doing it the way my parents did and what the neighbors think, right? And then there's conventional polyamory, which is basically I'd like to bang other people. I'd like some novelty. I don't want to say no to my appetites and desires, and we're going to practice some form of nonviolent communication and keep it all real, right? And that really, I mean, I think there's a lot of disingenuousness at that level. I don't think it's nearly as transformative for most people as they'd like to pay the lip service to. And really, I'm novelty seeking, and I like to like what I like, and there's a lot of extra hopped up lip service to the higher aspirational ideals. But really, it's still evolution just playing a trick on us. I just like these slow motion breakups. I want to start banging someone else. I'm going to tell you about it instead of doing it behind your back. But really, new relationship energy is going to fucking win the day, right? And I just keep fucking you while I start fucking the next person, right? And it's not actually that honest. I think what would be much more honest at that level is just saying, hey, we'd like to have an open relationship and have sex with other people. Versus we all love each other equally, et cetera, et cetera. But so you've got conventional monogamy, and then I think you've got conventional polyamory. People haven't actually really transformed what they're doing. But then above that, you have post-conventional monogamy, like true sacred union, dyadic, right? And then potentially above that, you have transformational polyamory, which I think, is quite likely a pinnacle point of human relating and working with sexual energy. It's just that a tiny, tiny fraction of people ever make it that far up the stack. Most people get sidelined and distracted, toggling between conventional monogamy and conventional polyamory. And the thing about tantra, right? I mean, the thing about like a working definition of tantra is just basically activities or practices that burn through karma. Right, so back to that notion of the crucible. And it's really easy to make more karma and really hard to burn it off cleanly. And so if you end up in complex relationships, which, right, I mean, obviously, Metcalfe's law of network theory is that the complexity of a network goes up with the square of the number of nodes in the network, right? So 2 people squared is 4, right? 3 people squared is 9. So things get complicated quickly.
Yes, they do.
Right?
No doubt.
And what you will notice is that if the point of tantric relating is to be burning off karma, but you're increasing exponential complexity with each other, then you might spend all of your time just trying to get back into present tense connection with each other. And that takes a fuck ton of time, a lot. And you might not even get there. I mean, most relationships are unstable in this space, and they're constantly pairing and breaking and pairing and breaking. And so you're only just trying to metabolize karma as you keep creating more of it, versus that transformational monogamous stage where you're like, actually, we're going to sit here and not flinch. We're not going to stir up the pond at all. And we're just going to free dive. We're just going to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And so there's a real peril in conventional polyamory, the first stage of having your karma get in the way of your dharma, right? You're creating more causes and effects, right? You're carrying more blowback, more drama that is impeding you from getting to and psycho-excavating your purpose. And so I even had this thought yesterday with my partner, which was like, it's almost like a cenote, right? Down in Tulum, right? Those beautiful limestone cave aquifers, right? And the bottoms might look, almost like it was going to be a little, 20-foot deep pool, but there's another column that goes deeper and another column that goes deeper. And if you stay straight in the center of it, you can free dive all the way to the depths of consciousness, all the way down. But if you rattle around, if you knock off some coral, if you stir shit up, then suddenly you can't see anything. And suddenly all those caves and nooks and crannies, aka the drama, the karma, the relationships, can trap you, even drown you. And yet, if you stay smack dab in the center, you can descend the water column all the way down into infinite spaciousness. And that's arguably the game, which is, can we, no new karma. And if you're spending all your time processing and integrating how she thinks about what he did and how they feel and all this kind of stuff, all you're ever doing is horizontal activity, trying to get back to being present in relationship, horizontal activity, and you're not actually dropping deeper and deeper and deeper. And so that becomes a real, that's just an open question. Like if that's your jam, like if you're saying, hey, my dharma is to lean into novel relational formats, awesome. Then you're doing the work. But if your dharma is something else, right, then really check, what are the opportunity costs for me to take on that complexity? And you brought up the 3 of the 4. So in our research for this book, but also in just, socially and personally curious, checking in with communities of practice, particularly, West Coast, Colorado, very, Burning Man community, transformational community, et cetera, who felt like the kind of leaders, advocates, teachers, voices in the space of transformational relationship, basically. It felt like there were sort of 4 things, like you can have a soulmate, we'll call it that. Let's just say, a deeply bonded, connected, committed primary relationship. You can have children. You can have life's work. You can have polyamorous relationships. Pick 3 of those 4. So if you don't have, let's say you've come out, let's say you've had children and you're no longer in that relationship and you want to simply relate openly and you have passionate work in the world, awesome. You could probably do that. If you have, primary partner, compelling work in the world, no kids, you've got the bandwidth for open relationship. I haven't yet seen anybody nail all 4. So this is not a law. This is merely a thesis, right? But we haven't seen it violated yet because it's just a bandwidth question.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what is your work to be done?
Yeah, when you brought this up to me on our hike, it blew my fucking mind because it really put into words the feeling that I had within, which was at this stage of our relationship, and for people who've been following along, my wife's had a boyfriend for over a year now. I have not been called to have another girlfriend, having experienced that. I mean, I felt like my consciousness was pulled in every fucking direction. So to use the cenote example, I would have been in every crevice and every cavern except for ascending or descending into the depths of my own consciousness and awakening. It felt like I was putting out fires everywhere. And, I think what I told you was I would rather learn how to paint better or play Native American flute with my spare time, or finish the Center of the Cyclone book, or The King, the Warrior, the Magician, the Lover, anything else that fills my cup is more valuable to me with my time and my bandwidth and what my mental capacity can handle, because we have a soon-to-be 5-year-old and we have a baby girl coming on the way this summer. And we have, I'm definitely doing the vocation. I have my life's work. It's having interesting conversations with people like you. It's continuing to learn and to grow. And as I work on piecing together key elements to a better life, sharing that with the world.
Yeah.
That fucking matters to me a lot more than who else can I fuck?
Yeah. I mean, so much of it it feels like the difference between an alchemist and an addict is the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Right? Because the tools, but especially once we're in this left-hand path, like you can work with it all, you can play with all these hedonistic or hedonic technologies, you can get lost spinning in that space. And really the only thing to separate, am I spinning or am I bringing back gold, right, is do I ship it?
Yeah.
Right? And as long as there's some new novel diversion, we can become slaves to our own dopamine loops and our own pleasure seeking. And then we're just fucking little monkeys just beating off. Right?
Yeah.
And the difference between God man and jerking monkey is a razor's edge. And if you're not subscribing to orthodox guardrails, you're saying, I'm going to trust my own judgment and steer. It's very easy. It's like driving on a highway in a whiteout. It's very easy to end up in the ditch and not even notice you got there, because you don't hear the rumble strip. And so, and then that goes back to sort of mate selection. It's sort of like if you're pure, it's like the difference between like sport fucking and sport climbing. To me, it seems an interesting analogy because, with sport fucking, if it's just we're here as consenting adults to, rub bodies and have fun, that's awesome. Good for you. Like, just do it nicely, be clean with each other, that kind of thing. And that's very similar to sport climbing. Like if you go to an indoor climbing gym and all the anchors are bolted and, all the ascenders are mechanical and you can really hard to fuck it up, and you can climb, you can tie into a rope with pretty much anybody. And if somebody looks good in their climbing harness and leggings, you're like, hey, honey, you want to climb with me? Let's do this. And it's very low consequence, high enjoyment. Pretty easy to do, very low bar for who I would tie in on a rope with to sport climb. But when you think about the kind of sex magic tantra space, then that's much more like high altitude mountaineering, right? And who I choose to do that with is a fundamentally different filter. It's not, do you look good in the climbing outfit, right? Or would I like a romp with you? It's can I hang with you for 3 days hanging on a portal edge, at 6,500 meters, hanging on by our fingernails as a Himalayan storm rips through? Or if I take a whipper and break both my femurs, do you have the skills and the wits to get me safely back down to a helicopter evac? Right? And so the bar there is it's a fundamentally different question. Even though we get so fixated on like sexuality that we often don't get past that. And so the sport climbing to sport fucking versus high altitude mountaineering, your selection for climbing partners to go into that death zone, that place of high consequence and high risk, is fundamentally different. And that's the other theme in the Sex at Dawns and the Untruths in all of these books, which I keep reading and then wishing they would go further.
Yeah.
Because the basic thesis of these books is saying, hey, there's a lot of old, rickety, rigid, maybe even inaccurate social customs and norms. And if we are to be free, sex positive, consenting adults, we should take those things away. And you're like, awesome. That's great. But it's fundamentally around that notion of kind of secular humanist sex positivity. We should take away the barriers to a full exploration of sensation, relation, pleasure, right? And that's great, but it's a very tactical argument, because what happens is if you follow sex positivity far enough, right, you kind of end up, it shares a backyard fence with tantra and sex magic. And if sex positivity is about taking away barriers, taking away rules, right, and allowing people to experience things freely, that's an awesome antidote, right, to repressive social norming. But the backyard fence bumps right up against sex magic and tantra. And there's a fuck ton of rules in that space. Because it's like, you don't know what you don't know, right? And in fact, it's very easy to overcook, to lose your mind, to do a bunch of things. And so for me, it's a little bit, now I'm mixing metaphors madly, but it's a little bit like the difference between, being a kind of hooligan at a ski resort and you're trying to stay away from the ski patrol. They're going to clip your ticket if you're going too fast. You're jumping air off the catwalks, right? And you're like, you're not the boss of me. Fuck you, man. Right? and that's the game. You just stay away from ski patrol, right? Which is kind of the realm of like sex positivity. Like, let us go do what we want and have fun without repression or punishment. Great. But then you go through those little backcountry gates at the top sometimes you see, right? Especially in resorts out west. And it's like, hey, like avalanche zone. Like, you need your equipment. You need to have a transceiver. You need to have a shovel. You need to have probes. You need to know what the fuck you're doing out here, because while it looks the same, it's all white stuff we get to slide down, right? It's not the same. Inside the boundaries, there's avalanche control, there's grooming, there's all these things that make this place safe. Out there, you're actually in a dynamic, lethal environment, right? And if you don't know what you're doing out there, you have no business going. And so I think that that's the question, which is, particularly when you combine psychedelics, you combine sexuality, you combine all these liberating and liberated technologies, the tendency is to say, you're not the boss of me, right?
Yeah.
I am my own master, versus, holy smokes, we're in territory that is complex, potentially fatal, profoundly beautiful, right? But is a fundamentally different environment than the one that we were just leaving.
Oh, without a doubt. All right. So now we can get into, now that we've paved the way here, let's get into the juicy stuff, brass tacks.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think the simplest is just to say, okay, so now we've laid out the formats, the idea of ideally some form of sexual yoga of becoming is potentially a category or form of accelerated human development. The historical lineages, East and West, are sort of tantra and sex magic. The relational formats can be any option you choose: celibacy, serial monogamy, lifelong monogamy, polyamory, or open relating. That is a subset of hierogamy, which is ideally any relational format that gets you to those higher domains, right? The sacred union. And that there are tools and techniques that can accelerate the access to peak experience and the healing and integration of trauma. So now we can talk about roadmaps, like how to actually get this done. So let's just say requires high trust, high integrity, impeccable human relating. Because without it, if you're going down that cenote, right, or if we use that example, right, you will muddy the water, you will not be able to see, right, and you will end up risking life and limb. And as an example, right, Aleister Crowley, the kind of, famous 20s.
I just got his magic number 4, book 4. But I want you to dive. I haven't opened it yet, but I looked at it and I was like, holy shit, this dude went deep.
He went crazy deep. He went crazy deep. I mean, he was one of the best mountaineers of his generation. So he was pioneering like crazy mixed snow and ice routes in Scotland and Europe that no one else had done. He was on mushrooms in Mexico on one of the volcanoes, got this huge fucking download, and then goes to Egypt and downloads his whole thing at the pyramids. He was utterly radical. He was hanging out in his the Abbey of Thelema, his sort of temple, having sex with one of his consorts, high on hash and opium, while playing chess against 4 dudes in different rooms around him and defeating them all. I mean, he was a fucking G, and writing poetry. I mean, like absolute polymath, and insinuated himself in basically the Western Hermetic orders, like the Golden Dawn that Yeats was a part of, and all of these different secret societies that were the keepers of the kind of Persian, Greco-Roman, Egyptian sort of sacred transformational traditions. It rocketed to the top of each of them, blew them all up, and kind of destroyed them, and then kept going until he and then created his own ultimately. So I mean, like, truly epic, well beyond the 666. He's the sign of the beast. Showed up on the back of Sgt. Pepper guy, and yet, also a super cautionary tale, kind of like Lily, where you're like, if they were finding all of that light, how did they end up? How did it not bear fruit visibly in their life? Because I mean, you and I are husbands, you and I are fathers, right? I mean, this stuff matters, and it's not enough to just go seeking truth or seeking power for the sake of it, right? We have to be able to bring it back home, and it has to bear fruit in our lives, and in a way that's stable, in a way that's grounded, in a way that's life affirming and supporting for everyone we care about and are responsible for. And Crowley, I mean, he burned out 3 of his consorts. He called them Scarlet Women when they were initiated into that role, and they lost their minds.
Damn. Right.
So at first there's a kind of a titillating sense of like, oh, cool, super sexy time. Want to know all about it, And the realities is it definitely works. It works better than you can imagine, and you will find yourself in incredibly high altitude, high consequence terrain faster than you know. So just to state those things as kind of, appropriate precautions. And if you engage in this process, I mean, my partner and I literally had to kind of like write on a piece of paper and stick on the fridge, like, remember, we did this on purpose. Because you get into it and you will forget where you are. And what arises is so triggering and so, because I mean, back to that crucible idea, right? The idea is how do you turn the flame and tune it so that it precisely keeps your whole self system, your nervous system, your psychology, your all of it on a slow simmer without boiling over. Right? It's like when you were stoned in college and trying to make mac and cheese, and you'd crank that fucker on high because you really wanted the mac and cheese.
Goes over the fucking stove.
It's a mess, right? And then you turn it off, and the whole thing settles. But and you get goopy pasta, right? You actually want, in alchemy, you want the slow simmer. And when you engage in these practices, at first you're like, okay, this is super fun, and then you're like, oh my gosh, we're in the ooey gooey, like we're in like the warm honey. And we can't miss. This is amazing. This feels so good. I've never felt this good, actually. This is incredible. And then you're like, we can't miss. Like, no look threes. Like, look at us. We're just fucking styling it. Until like it's burned down to the next level of your karma, of your pain, of buried traumas, of these kind of things. And when that comes up, it's like, you feel like you've just been kicked in the balls. You want to puke. You hate each other, right? And so Barry Long, who was an Australian tantra teacher, said, until you would rather eat a shit sandwich, you haven't even begun tantra.
Wow. So this is sex as a practice.
Yep.
In the same way that psychedelics would be used as a practice for uncovering, peeling back layers, awakening, and that as a built-in requirement of working through your shit.
Yeah, 100%. And the notion that the shittiest shit will actually occlude your self-awareness that it is your shit you're working through in that moment. It will hijack you, and you will get pulled down into that old narrative pattern. So you will get sucked down into the hell realms, and the only thing you'll have to survive is muscle memory of how, like in surfing, when you get dumped by a wave and you can't tell, you're in the washing machine and you can't tell which way's up. What do they say? They say, climb your leash, right? Because your board floats, right? Yeah. And you just have to, you don't know which way's up. And that is your only location. So returning to the love, returning to the practice, staying with it. So I'll back up and just set up a parameter, which is the difference between sexual yoga and your romantic sexuality. Is that romantic sexuality is typically either an exclamation point on a good day, like woohoo, I just got a raise or a promotion, or I just kicked ass, like let's go have sex and celebrate, or it's a power negotiation tool that is dispensed or withheld to gain other things in life or the relationship, both of which are, relatively ephemeral, shitty, not that profound. A sexual yoga is, we commit to this as ironclad practice the same way I do to working out or flossing my teeth or whatever. I don't wait to see if I feel like it in order to do it. I do it because I value the long-term accrued benefits. Right? And if it's helpful, you can separate the two. You can still do the Valentine's Day. You can still do the wahoo, I love you, right? You can do all that. But the notion of adding in a sexual fitness or a sexual yoga practice is pronounced. And that is a daily, weekly, monthly calendar, right? Where you stick with it, hell or high water, especially high water, right? Especially when I hate your fucking guts. And we're going to bow onto the mat anyway, right? And that's the beginning of turning up the heat and of creating the container of the alchemical crucible. So, we can come at this 1,000 different ways, but basically at the highest level, what you're attempting to do, you mentioned psychedelics as distinct. This actually all goes together at some point. So basically, if you pursue this with grounded, ethical connection, relational strength, discipline, humility, openness, and you don't flinch, you will end up with basically, and you're open to making use of all the tools and technologies, respiration, movement and embodiment, sexuality and orgasm, music and art and substances. And you basically end up with a acro yoga, Thai massage, psychedelic dance party fuckery session that ends up in rad shamanic tantric space. And what that can look like is the idea of saying, okay, back out sexuality for a second. If you're just on the route to wholeness, what do I do? Well, I do body work, right? I do emotional psychodynamic work. I do breath work. I learn to control my physiology. I learn to not be in a fight, flight, sympathetic stress response. I learn to down regulate. I learn to do all these things. And then you basically just say yes to all that, and then just add cultivating and releasing sexual, erotic, orgasmic energy to pulse the nervous system, right? In a period of peak arousal, such that I light up all my circuits with light. And I use that to both gain inspiration, which typically comes through at those times, as well as gain insight into where in my system is still broken or impeded. And then I can even use some of that juice to then mend as I go. And that, arguably, I'm not aware of a more comprehensive protocol, because it kind of makes sense. You're leveraging hormonal stuff, you're leveraging neurophysiology, you're leveraging all of these things. And back to the MAPS PTSD research, you are engaging in profound trauma work and integration. And so, I'm torn now between getting into specific paint by numbers, like the how-tos, versus the emotional, psychological,
Let's start with
relational
emotional,
arc.
and then let's
Okay.
get into the how-tos. 'Cause
Okay.
I definitely want to get that.
Yeah. So let's just say we're going to come back to the how-tos, but let's just say we're doing it, and we're doing a daily and a weekly practice, and and it doesn't always have to be slam bam fuckery every day. It's just a matter of you just keeping the flywheel spinning. All right. So you're generating heat, you're generating these things. We talked about how you might start out in the first band at like honey, or what we would kind of playfully call the yum, where it's super ooey gooey and super pleasurable and fun. You burn through that. While you're in it, you think you can't fall off it. And then you fall off it and you hit the next layer of psychoarchaeology where you're like, oh, this is a pain point in our relationship. This is an imbalance. This is something from my past, from our past. We've just paved over in the comings and goings of life. We get to that knocks us out of it. We might even forget we were in it. We might even forget that we were conducting an intentional practice to get us to this level. Once we're in it, it's just like, fuck this, I hate this, and I hate you, right? If you flinch at that point, you get booted out and you forget you were playing the game. You've turned off the flame, right? If you can remember, however painful and white knuckling it is, and stay in the practice and stay in the love, then you can learn to work it out. So we don't actually have to have a bitch session. We don't have to go to our couples therapist. We don't have to do all the normal stupid shit that people do, thinking that words are going to replace energetics. You can work it out. Work out the kinks, work out your problems, work out your solutions, work out your answers, work out your questions. You can work it out in a neurophysiological way via the deliberate cultivation and cycling of this psychosexual energy. And you can also learn to make love, right? Because if love is really just a neurochemical profile, I don't have to talk to you about it until we stumble ourselves back into it. We can just be like, hey, boop, 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 boop. Let's do that. Right? Let's create high vagal nerve tone. Let's create an abundance of oxytocin, right? Let's create dopamine and endorphins. Let's precipitate that physiological profile and then see how we feel. So once you realize that is a complete reversal of all of human relational dynamics and norms. We don't talk about it. I don't negotiate. I don't say, you do the dishes and I'll laundry the socks, or you had a guy's weekend, so now I get a girl's weekend and a spa day. None of this tit for tat scarcity mindset bullshit. You're like, we can fucking print money. We don't need to be hoarding the piggy bank, right? And so learning to literally engineer and make love becomes a profound insight of like, how do we go through this? So we can fuck it out. We don't have to talk it out. And that doesn't mean we're repressing the dynamics. It's choosing a neurosomatic way of metabolizing them and working through them versus just linguistics from ego-based separate identity. So let's just say you're engaging this game of psychoarchaeology, and I realize I'm throwing out a lot of like neologisms, but I think people can track them. So, and you kind of just burn through each layer, and the prize, it's almost like a video game. The prize for not flinching and staying in your practice, bowing on the mat, which is effectively your bed, right, is that you get the level up. So if the level of pain and trauma that you're now getting down to, you haven't visited for a while or ever, you have a choice. You either get hijacked in the narrative and you get stuck in cause-effect loops, aka creating more karma. But if you don't flinch, right, and you stay in the practice, then you dissolve it forever. And you can do that to get to the deep now with each other. Because we're very rarely co-located in time and space and identity with each other, right? So if we're sitting together and we've got a long history, right, it's always my leading edge. What's my latest ayahuasca insight or breakthrough? What's my most profound new me? Oh, the scales have fallen from my eyes. I used to think this, but now I am that. Versus your partner's bleeding edge, which is, where's the last place you hurt me deeply? And I've got that registered, Bessel van der Kolk, issues are in the tissues, right? Where's the last place you fucking hurt me? And I'm located back there. So I might be 6 months or 6 years out of phase with your newest, greatest, shiniest, right?
Yeah.
And that creates all kinds of dissonance and conflict. And the number of times that somebody on their leading edge starts then projecting their shadow back to their partner of like, oh, we're just not on the same path. They're not just as interested in spiritual growth as I am. They don't even recognize who I've become now. I think I might need to separate or start banging someone else, right? I mean, it's so many easy ways versus owning the shadow, which the person holding the trauma is saying, hey, in order for me to trust this new you, I have to have you come back and credibly make amends and atonement for the old you that hurt me here in this way. Right? And the temptation for spiritual bypass for the new person is like, I'm not going back. I'm never going back. I'm a totally different fucking person now.
Yeah.
I've let all that go. And it's like, well, not so much. We're always out of phase, and throw in kids. And that's a huge time lag. Like, who are we as new parents versus who are we as parents of teenagers? Right? We're different humans. And our kids have been imprinting off us that entire time, probably more accurately than we were ever aware, right? Yeah. And so 4D psychology, like how do we add in the layer of time, right? Because I mean, like you guys use that phrase a lot, but that St. Paul thing of love keeps no record of wrong, right? When we enter Kairos together, when we enter the deep now, where there are no records of wrong, right? There's only love. There's only mutuality. Right? So wherever 3 or more are gathered, right? There I shall be. So getting to that is both, powerful, beautiful, and tricky. And the moment we kick out into our records of wrong, right, we've created another karmic loop. So if we engage in this practice, we can go through our relational backlog, and we can use the experience of enoughness, love, belonging in those states to then revisit past trauma and release it. And if we can release it without reanimating the stories and kicking back into the dynamics, then we can flush it from our system. And again, Rick Doblin talks about it. He's like, memories aren't simply a scrapbook we take off the shelf, look at, and put back. We take them off the shelf, we look at them, and then we rewrite them again. And then we put it back. So you can literally go through that experience. You can then, once you've done that, and this is not like cleanly linear, you kind of jump around, but then you can go into not just your biographical relational stories, but some form of gender dynamic. So like the masculine, the feminine. And this would, this is cis heteronormative, but for anybody in any other style of relationship, I think you can, generally speaking, pairs will take on those kind of roles or energetics. And if you've ever done eye gazing, right? I mean, I think even in like academic studies, 70% of people doing eye gazing experience shape-shifting of the partner they're looking at of some kind. Of course, in the academic studies, they don't venture guesses as to why, right? But let's just say that if you're in extended tantric space, low light, altered state kind of experiences, you can often experience your lover shifting, right? And different aspects or elements. So it can be and sometimes they're spooky. Sometimes they're not romantic. Sometimes it can be, the rapist, the murderer, the lecher, the pervert, the monster, the slut, the whore, the angel, you name it, right? You can sort of just flicker through all the archetypes and you're like, holy smokes, like the two of us are having sex, making love, doing whatever we're doing. But in fact, it feels like we're holding or experiencing the entire catalog of the masculine feminine dance through time. And that can be super, if you don't balk, if you don't freak out, and again, anytime there's a freak out, anytime you collapse into narrative, boom, you're out. But if you can stay in the center of it, just descending, that is for sure a layer to go through. And in fact, my partner, Julie, a year ahead of me too, was experiencing the imbalances and the suffering and the vulnerabilities of the feminine in this space. And she was doing her best to like name it as she was experiencing. She's like, I think there's a big reckoning coming. I think there's an awful lot of feminine pain that needs to be expressed. And it was curious because we didn't know. And she was just feeling her way into that descriptor. But it's things like that. It's you start getting into the archetypal psychosexual dynamics that are not just about your life together. there's something deeper and more timeless. So you're kind of in that realm of mythopoetics.
And like dipping into morphic resonance or the collective consciousness of all females ever.
Yeah. And again, that requires strength and grace and wisdom to hold without having it spin you out anyway, really, and to stay in the eye of the cyclone, right, and not flinch. And then ultimately there's levels of even deeper, non-human and or timeless archetypes of like original man, original woman, and then potentially, I would just say non-human archetypal energies. And so then you're dancing, then you're sort of sky dancing, and you're up in the realm of the gods. And then boobity 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 boo, back to me and you, back to Monday morning, back to school buses and lunches and cleaning, right? So the ability to integrate that stuff into the householder's path, right, can be really beautiful because, let's face it, right? Life's a bitch. Work is hard. The nitty gritty wears us all down. And trying to make a life together is a lot of withdrawals from the energetic bank account. And to have a way to make love, to have a way to restock our reserves is profoundly useful and beneficial. And then there's one other element with like, as you find your way into hierogamy, like, holy smokes, this isn't just about bumping uglies, right? This is about a gateway to expanded information, insight, and inspiration. There is, and we talked about like the post-conventional monogamy, not the traditional bed death one. Then you're like, wow, what we're doing together is no longer fucking. What we're doing together is we're saying, hey, we're two primates with neocortexes and spinal columns connected to erogenous zones. And if we learn to hook these up, we create a time-traveling space egg, right, that lets us surf the fucking universe together. And that was, by the way, that was Crowley's big insight, was literally that. The working of LAM, L-A-M, was something that he and one of his consorts discovered in like 1917 by accident, which is a whole other story, right? And so you're like, oh shit, so you're my like galactic fucking space captain. Like, why would I be looking to pick some girl up at the TGI Fridays? It would take a year to get you up to speed, and I'm not even sure you could hang if we got there. So rather than the notion of like, oh, I'm in committing to this relationship, I'm missing out on novelty, I'm missing out on pleasure, I'm missing out on sensation. You're like, oh no, this is a totally different category of experience. And the bar for, back to sport climbing versus high altitude climbing, the bar for who gets to do this is so high that it instantly takes all the FOMO of just, casual novelty seeking sexuality off the table. You're like, the thing we do is utterly transpersonal. And so there becomes a way to cherish and deeply appreciate, right, the stability and the reliability of, hey, you finished my sentence. Hey, we can coil ropes. You fix lines. You know where all your stuff goes. You don't lose your shit. And we can go to the high ground because it's the view from the high ground that is what lights us up, right? Not just can we monkey around on climbing holds.
Yeah, that's fucking fantastic. Well, you definitely have my interest beyond peaked. Let's talk about some of the how-tos.
Yeah. So, basically, and in fact, I just jotted this down for the first time. I've been thinking of it in my head for a while. But basically, what is this sort of hedonic engineering matrix? What are the kind of the tools, the interventions, the activities that you can use in a way that is sort of open source configurable? So it's the idea is not that this is the way. This is a toolkit, and here is a way of thinking of combining these things for different effects and results, right? So, the first is, basically we know that as far as mapping states of consciousness, right, that kind of 21st century normal, right, is typically high beta wave neuroelectric activity, high default mode network, rumination, I'm spinning out, thinking about myself, talking to myself, a lot of prefrontal cortical activity, typically stress hormones, so norepinephrine, cortisol, right? I'm kind of in that forever triggered fight, flight, hypervigilance response. Typically low oxygenation, poor air exchange, right? So I've got a lot of CO2 kind of build up in my lungs. I'm not fully oxygenated. My posture, I'm often slumped, kind of shoulders rolled. Everything we do is forwards and collapsed, right? Versus back. Often low testosterone, etc. You can kind of go down the list, probably poor vagal nerve tone, etc. And that's most of us, most of the time, is like deconditioned zoo animals grinding it out in traffic and working desks and that kind of stuff. So you're like, okay, so we know that. We know what that set of parameters discloses as far as our lived experience, how it feels to be alive in that state. And then you're like, okay, but a lot of fun stuff happens, right? In alpha and theta wave activity. That's, generally calming meditation into deep hypnagogic spaciness and spaciousness. We know that, dopamine is generally fun and sits us up and makes us pay attention. Endorphins typically do the same. Anandamide, the endogenous endocannabinoid, right? These things are pleasure-producing, pain-reducing, often cognition-enhancing. As with the neuroelectric stuff, we know that tryptamines, in our nervous system and our brains are righteous. We know that fascial integration and open spine and pelvic mobility are positives. We know all these things. So you're basically like, okay, now how do we steer stuff over there? So you could start with a daily practice of orgasmic meditation, right? Which is just a 15-minute practice of stimulate, and again, cis heteronormative, so adapt as needed. But you could basically say, okay, on a daily basis, hell or high water, for the sake of sexual fitness, not for romance, right? We commit to 15 minutes of stimulating the female partner's clitoris as lightly as possible, as slowly as possible, for 15 minutes without expectation of reciprocity or foreplay, right? Or climax. So this is purely a nervous system sensitization practice, as well as whatever positive neurochemical cascade it triggers. And there's some research, and I don't think Nicole has published this yet, but she's been on it for a couple of years, and I'm super curious as to her results, because they had a thesis that after 3 months sustained of that a woman becomes turned on, which was kind of their placeholder category for a woman who is basically not in a hypervigilant response and is basically able to express her full true self, not unlike an MDMA experience, that actually becomes a sort of new normal for a woman after this. Now, I haven't seen the definitive research, but that's the intriguing thesis.
Okay.
Right? So you say that. So that basically, and also for the male in this situation, if you think about guys, since the age of 12 to 14, right, most guys have been neurologically encoded and imprinted on harder, faster, right? Basically grip it and beat off like a fucking monkey until orgasm as fast as possible. And the more aroused I get, the harder and faster I do the thing, right? Which, if you look at most low-level pornography, is still in play. So we're getting it visually encoded, all these kind of things. And the practice of that orgasmic meditation practice is slower, softer, which is actually a mind fuck for a guy. So you have a partner that's appearing to get aroused. I want to go harder, faster. No. Slower, softer, which in itself, because people will often ask, well, what's in it for the dude on this one? Well, what's in it for the dude is two things. One, you're going to rewire that overwhelmingly strong imprint. And number two, you're basically, giving your partner the ability to sort of rise up the escalator of the building of their arousal, so that you will start on the second floor or the third floor of their arousal and sensitivity in a way that's fundamentally different than 15 minutes of you doing your signature special moves.
Yeah.
If you even last that long. Most dudes don't, right? So the idea of just that. Then you can engage in edge play to bring your partner close to climax. And this works both directions. So you can take turns doing this. And when you're ready, you can basically, what we would call a 52.1 protocol. So I'll back up for a second, set the scene. So beautiful, clean, aesthetically dialed room, some form of showman or altar, like a focal point that is often at the foot of the bed, right? Candles, good music, just dial your space, vibe it out, and have beautiful, transformational music, ideally with super fucking funky drops, right? so you then, you're riding, you've got the environment and the scene set, low light, candles, music, and significance, right? Aesthetics. It can just be Pythagoras 101. It doesn't need to get highly ritualized or Wiccan. It can just be, hey, pairs, 2 candles with a focal point. It can be 3s. It can be 1s. It can be squares, circles, triangles. Like, just arrange stuff in a way that is aesthetically and geometrically balanced, and it'll do the thing.
Okay.
Right? And the idea of like, don't ape or imitate other people's juju. Don't put stuff up there that's not yours, that hasn't come to you authentically, right? Start minimalist, right? Go Zen, right? But use it as an anchor point to hold. And the same comes with body adornment, right? Just think of it all as sacred geometries. All we're trying to do is emphasize and align sacred geometries. So I'll back up to the preconditions. For a woman, what we're trying to do, if you remember the idea of the hedonic matrix, is we're trying to turn on all of the neurophysiology that we know leads to positive, non-ordinary states. So for both partners, really, nipple clamps are a simple way to do 2 things. One is they're slightly painful. And actually, when you take them off, they can become quite painful as the blood all rushes back in. So that is an endorphin stimulator. So you're like, that's interesting. Any nipple stimulation stimulates oxytocin production. So you're like, okay, so now we're going to have deeper pair bonding. And when we get to arousal, there's a 4-to-1 pain to pleasure tolerance, close to orgasm. So at some point, you can hotwire pleasure pain, right? So you're like, okay, so do that. The next is vagal nerve tone and pelvic floor engagement. And so back to evolution being super efficient. It just is what it is, but you have to get comfortable with basically ass play and hygiene. So the same way you wouldn't smoke a cigar and vomit and then go kiss someone, right? You would prepare the orifice for its desired erotic activity. You do the same with your back door. But the reality is that our vagal nerve, effectively, we're still old school. We're worms with tubes. We're mouths and asses. Right? You get rid of our limbs, like way back in the day. This is what we are at a root level. And our vagal nerve is the wandering nerve that starts in our brain, goes to our heart, ends at our root. And it's responsible for everything from blood pressure to senses of euphoria to, all sorts of biological regulation. It is pretty much the most primal metronome of tuning our system, of tuning our neurophysiology possible. And when you engage it, so Anish Seth, I think he's in Princeton, he's a gastroenterologist, wrote a funny article where he even called it poo-phoria. Yeah, you take a big dump and you actually, you get a drop in blood pressure, you get goosebumps, and it can feel surprisingly good, right? And you're like, well, that's your vagal nerve tone. And vagal nerve tone, most researchers these days are talking about like loving kindness meditation or even like electrical stimulation, almost like little pacemakers to do this kind of stuff. Well, vagal nerve is also gargling, singing, gagging, and taking a dump. And you're like, those are way lower tech, right? Don't need anything fancy, don't need anything imaginal. I can just actually do these things. So we'll come back to this stuff in a second, but basically just say prep work. If you choose and you're in a state where it's allowed, by the way, you want a physician. Dan Savage talks about a good giving game, right? Okay. For sexual partners, right? He's like, those are the 3 Gs. I think you need a physician that's the 3 Cs, which is connected, curious, and courageous. So if you have a doctor who can help support you along these lines, then you can have access to some of the pharmacology that can also be a helpful adjunct.
Okay.
So all these things. So those are my disclaimers. And let's just say you either have a medical card or you're in a state where recreational is allowed. Cannabinoids, aka, are helpful because they engage the anandamide in your system. And so that's one of the checklists on the matrix, right? You're like, oh, anandamide. Cool. Endorphins, oxytocin, cool. Vagal nerve tone, cool, right? You can sort of see how you're mixing and matching, and you're building a programmed state experience via sexual fitness. So let's just say you start with high-grade sativa. You don't want to be in like couch lock, right? You want to be energized and awake. Interestingly, ancient Greeks used to use cannabinoids to increase uterine contractions in childbirth. There is some anecdotal and some evidentiary support that it increases the duration and intensity of women's orgasms as a result of that. And, it's sort of aphrodisiacal, sensory affects are well known.
That's personal experience, N equals 1. Mm-hmm. Confirm that for sure.
Yeah.
It feels like the orgasm just lasts forever, myself included, but my wife most certainly feels that.
Yeah, exactly. And then to say nothing of shutting off default mode network, shifting states of consciousness between waking self every day and the sacred practice you're engaging in. And just one other sidebar on the 15 minutes daily. The beautiful thing about the 15 minutes daily for anybody in a householder's path, particularly with children, et cetera, is like, when do you have time for like an hour to 2 hour throwdown? Not that often. But when do you have time for 15 minutes? Infinitely more often, right? And so the idea of just spinning the flywheel is a profound lifestyle hack for re-engaging intimacy, et cetera. And for anybody that's like, oh, we don't get to have sex much anymore. We used to, like rabbits, and now we don't. And we're always too tired, et cetera. If you're waiting to the end of your day, that's the other thing. Men's testosterone tends to sag substantially after 8 p.m. So the dude's T count is down. You're both exhausted. And most people think of alcohol as an aphrodisiac. So you're like 2 drinks in, low testosterone and fatigued at the end of the day. My partner and I are 0 for like 100 at nailing end of the day lovemaking. We're like, fuck it. I'd rather sleep. I love you. I'll catch you in the morning.
Yeah.
Right. So afternoon delight is a key time, right? The idea of like peak, there's a spike in testosterone upon waking. It then slowly degrades over the morning, and then there's another blip in early afternoon, which is hence that rock and roll soon, skyrockets in flight, right? So if you can schedule, however you have to jimmy your schedule for mid-afternoon, early to mid-afternoon, or at the very least, dinner time to early evening, not the end of the day, you will radically change how you feel about each other, along with that 15 minutes work-in, because that will create tension and polarity as well. So most people are judging the strength of their relationship and their amount of love on the worst lie of the ball possible versus how else do we do this? And then just one other thing on scheduling and calendaring. You've got your daily practice, your 15 minutes. You probably, let's just say, schedule 3 actual lovemaking sessions a week. To go Tuesdays and Thursdays for, say, 60 to 90 minutes, and then give yourself a Sabbath half day of like 2 to 3 hours if you can. And then also you can schedule, what the English call dirty weekends, right? Which is going away to fuck, right? You time that with your peak ovulation for your woman. So most guys don't even know that women's arousal changes rapidly. They might have heard of PMS, and they might know when to duck when the plates come flying their way. Other than that, most dudes are fucking clueless. And typically the week after a woman's period is the week of her peak ovulation. She's got higher testosterone, progesterone, all these kind of things that make her far more open to hot and heavy, physical engaged sex. The week prior to her period is often her most fallow period. And if she's available at all, it will require much more sensitivity, much more touch, much more extended foreplay. Most dudes are like, well, I was rocking your world 2 weeks ago, baby. What happened? And they have no idea of that cycle. So understanding a woman's cycle, both obviously for her first and then for her partner, essential. And then you can time your once a month real blowouts for that week, right? And really time it. And I mean, it's simple. Again, I have a lot of sympathy for anybody doing the householder's path. So a fun way to do this, where you're also hacking dopamine, is to do like hot wire roulette, where you don't have to stay overnight, particularly if you have kids, right? It's a pain in the ass to figure all this stuff out, and having overnight care and all that kind of stuff. So instead of going to a dinner and a movie, You do hot wire roulette. You select 4 and 5 star hotels in your town. You hit the button and you get a screaming deal on you don't know which, and you read the reviews, do the normal shit. But like you can have a high degree, like 90% or plus, approval ratings. You get your hotel, and instead of dinner and a movie, you just go there and have a 3 to 4 hour special session at your partner's peak time, and then you come home and the babysitter's none the wiser, etc. You've just rocked the scene and had a meaningful reboot together. So that's all back to calendaring. Now we're back to setting the scene and what we're going to do. So music, lights, camera, action. Cannabis, if it's up your alley. Sativa, and basically a high grade, highly embodied, energizing sativa if you want to get particular. Then you engage in the 15 minutes of preparatory practice with nipple clamps and butt plugs. And for guys, there's the Aneros, which is which you know, right? Which is a prostatic stimulator. And because the reality is that anal access gives you access for the men, the prostate, and the pelvic floor, and the vagal nerve. So you're doing all of those things in one. For the woman, it's pelvic floor, increased pressure on the G-spot, and vagal nerve. Right? So you're just like, okay, so all those things are online. You then edge to the point of near orgasm, right? Then the lying down partner, in this case, we're describing the woman, will begin a 52.1 protocol, which is 50 hyperventilations. So what you're doing is looking to hyperventilate and blow off CO2, because you do a Wim Hof style breath hold practice, right? So now you're engaging in that. So 50 hyperventilations, like you're blowing out birthday candles, right? You should get tingly, right? You're blowing off your CO2, which will increase the amount of time you can hold your breath. Then if you have access, whether this is like boost canisters or whatever, like pure sports oxygen, if you have medical grade, back to your courageous connected doctor. If you have medical grade oxygen, you can be doing medical grade oxygen, and you take a couple of breath holds of pure oxygen, which will super oxygenate your red blood cells. So now I've got max oxat and depleted CO2. So I should be able to hold my breath for a really fucking long time. At that point, and again, this is not medical advice. If this is not ethically, morally,
give me the juicy stuff. I don't give a shit about the disclaimer. I get it.
If for any reason this is ethically, legally, morally, culturally, socially, professionally not kosher for you, where you are, where you live, just don't do that part. That said, you by the way, you pick a ripper of a song. You've started your breath work at the beginning of that song. You've done your 50 breaths. You've done your 2 oxygen saturations. You then take an inhalation of pure nitrous oxide. Okay. And you then hold it. You take it in as if it's your first breath on this earth, the breath of a newborn. And you hold it for as long as you possibly can until you exhale it as your dying breath. Okay. Now in that space, A, the fucking drop is about to happen in the music. B, you can pop the nipple clamps, because then suddenly all the blood rushes back at once, and you're now in a state of peak arousal, and you've hot-wired pleasure pain. So now all additional sensation, whether it is initially pleasurable or painful, all gets registered as pleasure. And whatever you were doing as far as stimulation, level it up 1 notch. So if it was fingers, it can be cocks. If it was toys, it could be this. If it, whatever it would be, just bump it up to the next level. And your partner is basically going to be slingshotted into a space of 0G weightlessness, right? In the information layer, where they can think anything they want about anything they can think of with a 300 IQ for 3 to 10 minutes. And many people who experience this equate it to a 5-MeO level experience.
Wow.
Yeah. So, with household materials. Right. So this is where, instead of like the Anarchist Cookbook, like how to build bombs with kitchen sink materials, this is the Alchemists Cookbook, right? This is how do we scale radical self-initiation, right? And what typically is perceived and received in that space is usually just spot fucking on and perfect for where you are in your life and what you need to hear or know. And so that becomes, now if you want to, that's the base level practice. So that's just the simplest program. Now you can add to that. So as you get comfortable, you can, and again, back to, if you want to add periodically, like once a month, once a quarter, once a year some version of substance enhanced. I mean, this was all mildly substance enhanced, but if you want to add to that, you can add oxytocin ketamine nasal spray, right? That will increase pair bonding. That will also increase a pleasantly dissociative space. And in fact, I suppose we can just talk about, like, we want to get super, like, technical, but very instructionally technical.
Sure.
For a sec. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically now you've got the basics, and then you can add any form of different breathwork, different compounds, different tools and toys. And then they can create different initiatory experiences. So if you think about, let's just take something like nitric oxide. So nitric oxide is the neurotransmitter that runs crosses the blood-brain barrier. Herb Benson at Harvard University wrote a great book called The Breakout Principle. He called it the bliss molecule, right? It's basically what flushes out stress and what brings in all the kind of more transformative state experiences. It is also a vasodilator, right? It shows up in everything from, so basically you're like, okay, nitric oxide is interesting, both as a shifter of consciousness, a transporter molecule, as well as a vasodilator, which obviously is nice for sexuality. So you're like, the mild, medium, spicy columns is mild. If you're interested in boosting nitric oxide, eat your beets and your arugula. So dietary enhancement. Medium would be take things like specifically concentrated nitric oxide supplements like Neo 40, which is actually based here in Austin as well, right? So,
okay.
So you can supplement, and they even have test strips. So you can test your resting saliva nitric oxide levels, and most of us are lower than we'd want, and you can just have that raise your baseline prior to sexuality. It'll increase engorgement, it'll increase sensitivity, and it will increase, again, it will facilitate state shifts in consciousness. And then maximum, Viagra and Cialis, right? And so most Taoist sexual practice, the alchemical Taoism, there's a reason why bears' livers and rhino horns and all those things are so fetishized in Asia and China in particular, is because, if you go back to it, most of it is always sex magicians were like, how do I maintain and keep an erection as long as possible so that I can then facilitate the other alchemical stuff? So this is different than being a horn dog with a boner, right? This is actually saying, hey, I'm actually going to, and this works for women as well at lower dosages, right? You can actually increase vasodilation and engorgement for both parties. And then also for a man, you can increase passive erection. Because, if you think about most men, how much of our bandwidth during sex is dedicated to getting and keeping an erection? Our movement patterns, where our minds are, how we fuck, all of it is just fundamentally down at that base level. And so many women are like, hey, honey, look at me, slow down. Like, what? I want to hug you. You're like, no, can't, must. I'm a little fuck rabbit because I have to. And if my dick went limp, that would be fucking mortifying. So the idea there is to say, okay, what if, I can just boost nitric oxide for all the reasons we discussed, and I can take that whole bandwidth offline. And I can now go slowly. We can now engage in positions and arrangements that I would normally not be able or willing to do if it was just pure friction-based play, right? And now I can focus on breath. Now I can focus on eye contact. Now we can focus on the subtle energetics or information that is disclosed in these experiences, right? So that's one band, right? Endorphins, we've already spoken about. Any form of pleasure, pain, close to, right, close to climax. So you can start with, people in the BDSM community use, fascinatingly, they call it sensation play, right? But it's like little pinwheel rollers and, obviously obvious things like cat and nine tails and flogging and paddling and all this kind of stuff. But some of it is literally identical equipment to what they use for children with sensory integration disorders. And that kind of stuff. You're like literally like rolling like a pizza pinwheel, like up and down your arms, feathers, like any and all of those things, which increase sensitivity and awareness, right? All the way up to straight up things that would be normally painful, right? So you have that whole spectrum. The oxytocin, mild, would be kissing, sucking, cuddling, eye gazing, right? Middling could be like the nipple clamps or nipple suctions. And then maximum could be the straight up nasal spray. So you realize, oh, there's a spectrum of what we can play with, what are the mechanisms of action, and how do we combine them based on our interest, our intensity, our value systems, our availability, whatever. But you realize, oh, it's neat if you include these things well. Testosterone, same thing for men and women, right? But everybody thinks of testosterone for guys, but obviously testosterone is a huge part of women's sexual arousal as well. You can do the lifestyle stuff, hot and cold contrast therapies, explosive weightlifting, plyometrics, etc., like stuff that everybody kind of knows. That's good, but generally only responsible for about a plus or minus 10% variation in what you can get out of it. You could also do topical gel, right? So I think Dave Asprey mentioned this about his wife at one point, but the idea of like topical gel on a woman's clitoris and labia, right, can create meaningful engorgement. Now, obviously, you're playing with hormones. Back to the 3C doctor, physician oversight, don't do stupid shit, all that, and periodically for specific reasons, and particularly for, actually even, I'll back that off. I'll say DHEA as a supplement is probably our medium one. DHEA is a precursor to both estrogen and testosterone. Many studies have shown that, particularly in women over 40, it can have a positive uptick as they metabolize it into testosterone. Now, for guys, it's not quite that simple, and you might end up metabolizing into estrogen, and it depends on what else you've got going on in your system. But that idea of like a dietary precursor supplement that will increase your bioavailability when you'd like to do it. And then let's say the spicy one would be actual testosterone gels, injections, intramuscular, whatever it would be, and playing with that in appropriate ratios and proportions. Women typically have a tenth the amount of testosterone, but it is very powerful at those levels. So guys don't overprescribe, et cetera. And there's obviously all sorts of pros and cons on sustained hormonal supplementation versus natural. But if you're literally engaging in those kind of levels of chemsex, then on the visionary level, on the visionary substances, the base level would be the kind of CBD THC, right, to be activating your endocannabinoid system. And the same way I just described the vagal nerve as this ancient, metronome of our neurophysiology, the endocannabinoid system is equally unknown and equally potent, and is arguably our secondary immune system. And it's the only system in our whole body that actually signals backwards and forwards from organs to brain and the other way. And it's responsible for, dozens of biological, basically wellness in our system. So you're activating that. If you want to go to the middle level, you could consider GHB, right, which is a highly sensory sexuality boosting compound that was available on the market and is subsequently not so much.
And at the right dose, it's really fucking safe. It's at the higher dose where you run into real issues. But it is something that is, Rob Wolf fucking talked about it as like one of the greatest compounds ever made. Mm-hmm. It was a bodybuilder drug for many years.
Yeah.
Increases growth hormone when you sleep, increases deep sleep. Yeah. Like, it's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously, has also been vilified as the date rape drug, because when people G out or take too much, they can end up in a passive, non-responsive state that could be, massively exploited. Right. So back to safe, high trust environments, et cetera. And then on the high end, you can explore, Anne and Sasha Shulgin, right, were a longtime couple that explored all of their lovemaking via psychedelically enhanced experiences. And they experienced, in particular, obviously MDMA is well known. I think it's actually overhyped as an erotic drug. It's typically a sensory and emotionally connected drug.
I have a hard time on a breakthrough dose of MDMA even getting hard.
Oh, yeah, because they're all serotonergic, and serotonin literally means soft tone.
Right? There you go.
So yes, which also brings us back to the ED supplements. Now, there's a huge caution as far as blood pressure, dropping blood pressure, and those stimulants. So anytime you deal with vasodilation and rampy amphetamine-based compounds or anything else, caveat emptor, that shit's on you. And there's a number, Peter Sellers back in the day, I think Peter Sellers died, doing amyl nitrates and some form back in the 70s, banging one of his wives or girlfriends. I don't remember which. So that is, you're into the red zone and know what you're doing is the simplest one. But MDA, sassafras, is renowned to be more erotically functional than MDMA.
I've only experienced that once. I got it when I was living in the Bay Area, and my wife and I went to a 2-hour couples Thai massage, and it was fucking psychedelic. It was so special. Mm-hmm. I felt shit unlock through that physical connection. But I mean, I had a dude, and even though I consider myself on the spectrum of sexuality, it was fucking erotic. Like, it was crazy to me. I was like, wow. Like, I was turned on, no doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean, and that also, I mean, that highlights another question: is what is life force? What is the energy we experience that we cultivate sexually? But then there's also what is love. And for most of us, we do the same way we get pleasure, pain wires crossed, and you can use that to your advantage. There's also the question of, are we crossing the wires of eros, like erotic, sexualized energy, and agape, a sort of brotherly Christ consciousness love. And oftentimes when we experience agape or any form of communal love or something that's just kind of pure, just that, the only somatic marker we have for it is sexual arousal. So it's why, like, folks in evangelical churches or Tony Robbins events, or you name it, anything that's profound and inspirational and cathartic, often end up pairing up and banging. Versus being able to hold it and being like, oh no, my familiar reference points are sexual, but this is actually distinct and a different thing. So yeah, just to finish the Ann and Sasha Shulgin one, their all-time favorite was 2CB. They said it was their primary erotic psychedelic. And you can do the same, they also made a mention of like museum dose or IMAX dose, right? You don't want to be, floor warbling, walls melting, dissociated psychedelic states. But if you're into threshold enhanced experiences combined with these psychosexual practices, combined with the peak states that you're cultivating, right, by slingshotting each other, then you can get to some very interesting realms and domains. And that's where you can kind of get into some of the archetypal stuff and the trauma release. So one of the interesting things you can do in this space, short half-life compounds are generally an easier fit, right? If you sign up for 6 to 10 hours, that's a rare, that's a high bandwidth, high commitment kind of play. But for instance, the cannabis can wear off in 90 to 120 minutes. The nitrous oxide oxygen breath work is literally 15 to 30 minutes. And by the MIT, their Department of Anesthesiology did a fascinating study on the impact of nitrous oxide, and what they found was that it was putting people for 3 to 12 minutes afterwards into a double amplitude waking delta state.
Oh, wow.
Which is very rare and only shows up in certain super esoteric, like Tibetan Dzogchen meditative practices. And like, it's not in Vipassana, it's not in TM, it doesn't show up in anything that most folks are aware of and do. It's high tech contemplative states with a lot of practice. And double amplitude waking delta is basically, it's like backdoor lucid dreaming. You end up in a complete high ideation, information saturated space where everything is reach out and grab it, accessible and useful. So just to go back, so now we're playing these games. The half-life game is important because, the same with the oxytocin ketamine, right? That can lift you up, give you a profound state-shifting experience where you can explore all kinds of things, make all kinds of sense, come back down together, and you're sort of, you're back down cooking dinner in an hour. Completely functional. So what you're saying is if you combine these things, if you combine all these evolutionary drivers, we talked about that kind of judo move, right, of like hacking the inputs, and you say we're going to combine respiration, embodiment, music, substances, sexuality. What you're going for is, instead of a long wavelength experience, the 12 hours and shoot the moon, and maybe you spend like 60 to 90 minutes in really generative space, but you spend the ramp up and the come down just trying to navigate, what's in your system and have a nice time as you manage body fatigue. Instead, you can compress the wavelength into, 30 minutes, 90 minutes, 2 hours, and then go for amplitude. How high up into the information are we getting? And then how am I not fumbling the fucking football in the end zone when I come back? Because that remembering, the anamnesis experience of like, oh shit, yes, everything is self-evident and I remember all of this. I've been here before. This is fucking my true nature, self, access to source, whatever you are experiencing. Then it slips through your fingers, gets away on the way back down, right? And so not fumbling the football is the other key part. So rules and regs, we would say never more than 2 of those breathwork cycles in a week. And stop when you're not remembering what you saw. And like live by that. Because otherwise you'll get snookered. Because you basically, I mean, as I said, what we're talking about here is hot wiring the entire human arousal and reward system. And it works. Like, it's the craziest thing. We just did this as like curious homework. We're like, gee, I wonder. Like, all we did was just pay attention to the research in all of these domains and then start putting them in like a bingo card. And we're like, hey, that research goes here, this goes there, this goes here. What happens if you put them all together? I don't know. Let's try. Maybe it'll work. and it works better than you can possibly fucking imagine. To the point where you're like, how is this not on the cover of Time magazine? Like, how is this not being like trumpeted from the rooftops? So in that, the goal is to get, back to hat tip to Crowley, the crazy uncle. He had a great phrase. He called it erotocomatose lucidity, right? Which eroto, the sexual, comatose, you're spaced the fuck out. Lucidity, you're still actually clear as a bell. So how do you get to that state wherein your waking consciousness is offline, you are fully engaged and satiated with sexual arousal, orgasmic energy, and yet you're able to make clean sense of what's going on. And that state is a profoundly generative one.
Mm. Well, fuck, I'm beyond interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and so there's, I mean, I'll just lay out, because I've never done this before publicly, but I'll just say the rest of the steps. So the rest of the steps are, now you can engage in protocols. And the specific protocols, the sex toys you would want are, Good Vibrations is a great store. It's a women-owned cooperative based in San Francisco. So they're sex positive and super grounded, helpful, good people. We're actually trying to put together some shopping carts, like a mild, medium, spicy shopping cart, so that people don't have to be like, what the hell do I do now? So that's coming, and I'll send you the links when we have
Oh,
them.
yeah. Awesome.
But basically, there's a couple of things that you can do. Because, I mean, if you think about wild, open-ended sexuality, even pornography, right? You think low-level San Fernando Valley porn, right? It's really debased. There's very little noble or sacred masculine. There's a lot of diminishment of the feminine. It's often just tragic and painful to watch, right? But in there, they are actually paradoxically intuiting what are esoteric sex magic rituals and initiations. So things like a woman being taken from behind while providing oral sex to another man, right? That's a fantasy play. Well, if you look at it and you actually understand it, you're like, oh, that is vagal nerve stimulation, right? The whole gagging and all that kind of stuff, right? Vagal nerve stimulation with stimulation from behind, etc. Double penetration, same thing, right? All of these things are actually potentially tantric initiatory practices for, I'm imagining, for a woman these days. That's incredibly high risk to say, A, to even admit, fear, slut shaming, social norming, all that kind of stuff. A, to even admit I might be curious. And B, what's the likelihood of me being able to arrange a social situation where this is safe and okay? Safe that my current partner and a other known male can hold me, can lead me through that experience without collapsing into their own insecurity or their own projections, that it won't destabilize the relationship, 1,000 things, that I won't be taken advantage of, any number of risks. So most women just opt to just firewall that off without realizing, hey, this is my body, this is my pleasure, this is my heart and my mind, and these tools in the realm of sexual fitness or sexual yoga can become profoundly powerful in healing and unlocking. So the idea of, again, what can you do with sex toys that can simulate, with one loving partner, can simulate what would normally be a much higher risk multi-person engagement, right? Is a profound way to say, hey, we all deserve the full spectrum of sensation and feeling and experience. We may not opt to do this in 3D with others.
Yeah.
Right? That can be a profoundly beautiful way for people who are opting on the side of two of us walking this road together to still open and expand the magical, mystical, initiatory experiences. And so if you combine all these things with some of those tools, and there's even, I think it's Vic Skin, I think they might even be here in Austin, but they have sheaths. So basically a guy can have effectively a very lifelike quality dildo that they can wear themselves, which expands their size. And it's like snugs up under your nuts. It's actually highly functional. So it's almost like the rubber arm experiments, right? Where you can rub the rubber arm, but you're feeling you're being touched, and it creates the illusion, right, of that's my arm, right? Especially when you add state shifting practices and activities, you can offer your partner, right, the experience of another different lover, but it's actually you, which is mind-bendingly interesting, right? There are harnesses where you can have a dildo and your cock. So you can engage in double penetration with a partner, but it's just you. And yet you are looking down and seeing the other cock, not yours, right?
So it's above yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mind-bending, like psychosomatically, completely transformative, right? You can mount a dildo on the wall and have your partner engage with a mirror, and you're looking and you're like, oh, subject, object, like here we all are playing these games, and you can open your partner into the wanton woman, which is arguably her deeply open temple priestess. So now you're unlocking unapologetic pleasure, and now you can actually go back. So now back to trauma healing. If you can initiate your partner and each other, but initiate your partner into the wanton woman, right? Then she can realize, oh, this is my timeless turn on outside of time and space, right? Now we're into Kairos and Chronos. We're somewhere in the deep now. And this is my full expression. Now, the oak tree was always present in the acorn. So now she can go back into her earlier sexual history. She can go back into her adolescence, high school, college, early 20s, any places where she might have not been fully seen. Inferior men and boys may have attempted to take from her sacred offering. And she can go back and she can relive, oh, well, if I am this forever and always, I was her then too. And she can then, back to the Mdma Ptsd therapy, she can rewrite those memories, even rework those scripts with you as her lover, holding her in that space, and completely rework time, space, and history.
Wow.
Right? To the point where we get to make each other whole outside of time via these loving practices, held in the light. Right. So, and this is the thing, like if a man, all men want, right? I want the, angel in the kitchen and the whore in the bedroom, the sort of classic whore Madonna. And they're like, oh yeah, nice. You got to pick one. And it's like, no. You can absolutely love and respect and hold and cherish your woman to the point where she can open to her full expression, which includes all of those things. And the cost, my boy, right, is you have to be willing to tolerate a limp dick. And as David Data said, you got to be able to take it up the ass to know God. And you have to be in impeccable fucking integrity. You cannot devolve into sex man. Like, I'm just going to turn you over and jackhammer you and call you a dirty bitch. No. You have to clarify your fucking system completely so that you are worthy of her trust. And if we can do those things, then the world opens for all of us, and we can take that love and take that healing back into our work in the world, back into our children, back into our creativity, and become whole humans.
Fuck yeah, brother. That's absolutely beautiful. And you're putting all this into a new book that you're writing.
Yeah. It's called Recapture the Rapture, Rethinking God, Sex, and Death for a World That's Lost Its Mind.
That's a hell of a title.
Well, I mean, that's my sense. My sense is the psychedelic revolution is going to run onto the rocks in a bunch of different ways, as it sort of almost has to. And that notion of the Alchemists Cookbook, like how do we create open source, scalable? What's the psycho-spiritual equivalent of blockchain? Like how do we get information so that people can initiate each other into healing, wholeness, and awakening radically, right? And do it in a way that scales and that allows as many people as possible to wake up into soul force. Because I mean, basically all ecstatic practices, meditation, psychedelics, sexuality are all death practices, right? There's the ego death in psychedelics and meditation. There's the little death, la petite mort is what the French call that lucidity after orgasm. They're all death practices, right? And so if we can use these conscious death practices to be reborn, we become twice born humans, we become anthropos, right? And in fact, the final stage, everybody talks about the hero's journey in Joseph Campbell, right? Which is, home away, home, the hero goes away. But like the notions, there's several, and I know we're going long, so we might want to just split this fucker. But there's later stages of the hero's journey that most people don't know, which is the woman is temptress, reconciliation with the father, and the sacred hermaphrodite. Right. And so woman is temptress is, can I, as a man, can I control my sexual impulses? Can I not just be a skirt chasing fucking douchebag? And can I actually hold and integrate that power? And specifically, can I be wary of premature extaculation, which is the moment I get into some high energy stuff, do I just nut all over the place? Do I either think I'm the second coming, or I go, or I do stupid shit, right? Or I go on a manic binge overload? Can I actually manage both my attraction to sexuality and desire, but also my need for returning to the womb? And that's like smoking weed and playing video games and jerking off to porn and like you name it. Like, can I master my impulses both for desire and just sucking at the tit, right? Of comfort and the feminine. So once I've done that, I can come online. The reconciliation with the father is the classic Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader thing, right? But it's also back to ethics versus morals. So if we've given up on conventional monogamy, right, and we're exploring open-ended tantric left-hand path sexuality, reconciliation with the father means instead of being the man that I'm trying to dodge or duck or rebel against, can I realize I am my own authority? So it's going from morals, someone's telling me what to do, to ethics. It's my relationship to my actions, the true warrior's path, right? If I don't internalize that, I'm fucking danger to myself and others. And all those 20-something hoodie bros puffing DMT at EDM shows, terrifying to me. Yeah. There is nothing that they have bowed down to that is higher than their own desires or impulses, right? So you get those two online. And the final one is the sacred hermaphrodite. And this is where the sex toy, there's one called Share, which is basically it's a two-way dildo with a egg shaped like a jelly bean that goes up into the woman. And she can wear it, particularly if she has a plug-in. It can just sit in there. So there's no straps, no harnesses, no goofy aesthetics. It's very clean. And then a cock. And you can actually, she can then fuck her man while stroking him. And what this does is it completely changes where the sensations are for both of your bodies. So if you think about it, a woman's turn on is predominantly gathered around her whole clitoris, potentially her G-spot, right? So she's used to moving her pelvis and spinal cord that way. Now the sensation is at the end of a 6-inch cock that she's now connected to, right? And is pressing against her clitoris. The guy is now experiencing his prostate. So suddenly your neuromotor patterns have completely reversed, as well as the aesthetics. The guy is on his back, his legs are spread, the woman is together and thrusting, and you're like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, this is literally not just aesthetically different, and certainly not even just conceptually kinky. You are literally rewiring your turn on and your movement patterns to be in completely reversed roles. And then as you meet in the hermaphrodite, the man-woman, and you've blended and explored, right, the swapping of energies. And so that's the final move in the hero's journey before they come home with the gift. And so that's Hermes, the thrice great in the Greek mystic tradition. It's all those things, which is, and in fact, Amanda Sage, if you know that visionary artist, she's at Burning Man, and she's created a beautiful painting of Vitruvian human. Right? So it's the same sacred geometries as Leonardo's, but it actually has Burning Man painted as the bottom of this. And I think that the notion of Vitruvian human, or anthropos, that blends head and heart, that blends masculine and feminine, right? That blends all of these things together in balance, is what this sexual yoga of becoming can offer us. If we stick with it, if we don't flinch as we get to our woundings and our traumas, if we don't get hijacked by either the bliss fuck part or the crucifixion part, because what it does is it lends us to both. You can create orgasms that can back up your nervous system. You literally have like a queue of like contractions to get through. You're like, holy shit, I didn't realize you can just program this. You can. That's the bliss fuck even. And the sort of the where you go into the information. You can sort of playfully call it like the cosmic fuck tunnel. You can like literally just launch each other down that road. But the connection in our bodies and in our lives and in our pain is the crucifixion. It's the here's Kairos, sacred time, here's Chronos, clock time, and to be aware and awake at that intersection in these bodies, in this lifetime, as it fucking is, with both the incredible heart-opening potential and the utterly gutting grief and agony of it all, delivers us to Christ consciousness, delivers us to that omega point of what Teilhard de Chardin called, literally, he said, the second coming isn't going to be an individual, as pretty much everybody says these days. He said it's going to actually, the body of Christ is the omega point at the end of time, which is all of us waking up together. And this is potentially a really, really fun way to get there.
It definitely is something I'm going to explore for sure in many different ways. And I can't wait for your book to come out. Do you have a proposed date by chance?
Yeah, it'll be spring catalog 21.
Okay.
So coming out early next winter. So it's like February, March.
Phenomenal, brother. Dude, it's been fucking absolutely beautiful having you on the show, and so much amazing stuff to share that I want to put into practice right now. I got ketamine oxytocin in the fridge. It's going down. Beautiful, brother. Thank you so much, Jamie. Where can people find you online?
Flowgenomeproject.com is an easy place, or on Facebook. We have a page there as well. And we do, live events, trainings, do backcountry courses. We haven't figured out how to teach this stuff yet because we're just not interested in going down that couples road. But it'll be there in the book, and we'll figure out some way to get information out to sincere couples.
Incredible, brother. Yeah. Thank you again.